All right, folks. Happy Thanksgiving and welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. Oh, what? This is supposed to be my turkey wagon. There's my turkey wagon. All right, look, if you like the videos, don't forget to like them and share them far and wide. We're everywhere. We're on Getter, we're on X, we're on Truth, we're, wherever, wherever people post, folks. But the best place is always to follow is on your screen below. peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. All right. We're going to bring Paul Danzin here to talk a lot about all of these issues here soon. But everyone's going to find out soon. I can't say anything yet. But I will tell you this much, which is why I wanted to do this show today. All right. Especially having Paul on to discuss it. First and foremost, because we have the Ukraine peace deal, and that's a big part of this discussion, and the infighting that is going on between Republican rhinos in Congress. And I think Mike Howell did a great job on War Room today explaining what we need to talk about as part of this conversation, which is that Republican lawmakers are not all cowards or corrupt or stupid. They are willing participants in the effort to sabotage America first. And this is something that people who don't know DC, don't know anyone in DC, if you're not in the machinations and you don't watch how the sausage is made and you don't realize that after Congress is at sessions out, they all go to the same damn restaurant and all pal around together and speak to like your sworn enemies together. It's like all against you. When MTG resigned, which we'll talk a little bit about in this for context. She mentioned the political industrial complex, and I think she's going a little bit off the rails here. And personally, you guys, if you've been watching me a while, you know how I feel about this. If you ran for a full term, Mike Cernovich is right. You need to finish your term. And if you are going to retire, then it's tough, because it's tough to have people who are there who are not at all beholden to the voters and know that, like a Tom Tillis, or when Adam Kinzinger did it, crybaby Adam Kinzinger, right? Mr. Tough Guy on Twitter, right? Like if he ever tried to pull that shit with Pete Hegseth in real life, he'd get his teeth knocked out. And Pete Hegseth, he'd walk the other side of the street anyway. He wouldn't even do it. This is like acting like he's the tough guy. The guy like killed people from tens of thousands of feet, bro. You ain't fucking Rambo, all right? Anyway, the bottom line is everyone acts as if like, there's a good answer to this. I understand where MTG is coming from. I know what happened. And if we have time, I will tell you the inside story. All right. She's not, there's a lot of stuff that's being said about her that is not true. And I'm not sure that the truth is any better, but it's also, to me, actually understandable, because I'm talking to a lot of voters, and I told Paul Bedard from the Washington Examiner this very thing. What she was doing before this erupted into a post calling her a traitor was representing what we were hearing from the voters day in and day out. Enough of the foreign policy nonsense. Get back to the domestic. You were elected to be an America First president. You were not elected to be a typical second term foreign policy president. Everything she was saying is what the majority of the voters, including America First, has been saying. So she was simply, I hate to say it, but it's like the White House and Mike Johnson are in a bubble. They're the ones who are listening to DC and not listening to the voice of the people, right? But then Ukraine comes around, and it's amazing because, and I'll tell you, this is what I'm going to tell you, what I'm able to tell you right now. I have been a part of a huge project that's been ongoing for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's part of one of two big projects that I've been doing. One I will openly tell you about, which is interviewing Republican voters who did not vote in Pennsylvania, in New Jersey, in Virginia, in Georgia, and asking them why they did not vote. Reviewing all of the get out the vote data from the people, from the clients that I do have, and looking at what people said in responses and text messages, all of that, right? And that's one thing. So that, but it contributes to this discussion quite a bit. And then the second thing, I just can't tell you that much about. All I can tell you is massive national survey, 15 states, focus groups in 12. It's a massive, massive project. Nobody on the right is doing a project of this size to look at the Republican Party's voters and ask them, what the hell is going on and what do you want? And it's very clear, which is, I didn't pull this question about, I made this question up about whether or not they should focus more on domestic, and they're too focused on foreign. I made that up, but I mean, I didn't pull this out of thin air. It came from speaking to, I don't even know, 100,000 voters at this point. It's a ridiculous amount of voters, guys. So they were all telling us the same thing. There have been a couple of people, that I've allowed to be privy to some of this information. David Giglio's one of them. So, you have all the Rhino McCarthy Twitter accounts and bots attacking him for saying the things. He's simply reacting to some of the results that we've shared with him on one of those projects. And it all tells a story. And that story is this. Before I tell you the beginning of it, let's rewind to 2024. And let's rewind to election night in 2024 and what I told people at the time. This was the broadest, most diverse, most young, dynamic coalition that any Republican candidate in the modern era has put together. That includes Richard Nixon, and that includes Ronald Reagan. And I'll tell you why I was more impressed with Trump's victory than theirs, even though their victories were much bigger as far as the popular vote and the electoral vote is concerned. Because putting aside everything that was thrown at Trump, the media industrial complex, the big pharma, Wall Street, the military industrial complex, the NATO industrial complex, the whole world is against this guy. And it's a miracle to prevail over odds like that, period. And then take the 1980 and 84 elections, even 88. The amount of illegal immigration that has come into this country since those elections is ridiculously it's country changing. And then, of course, the white vote itself, which Republicans have relied on until the era of Trump, Republicans relied on white voters more and more and more every year. And in Paul's state, by the way, when we bring Paul on, it's one of the things, white voters, even in the South, are getting more educated. So if you don't win this kind of a diverse, dynamic, especially younger coalition, you're doomed. You're doomed. This isn't a matter of like, I got the hot take on Twitter. This is a fact. This is the data. You cannot continue to win the state of Mississippi or South Carolina. Forget about Georgia. You see what happens when a state, the only difference is that Georgia had the Atlanta metro area, which Republicans stupidly opened to a bunch of Democratic jobs, which led to an accelerated trend in white educated share of the electorate. But also it's 30% African-American. By the way, look how well Trump did with African-Americans in Georgia. And alas, he wins the state, which Republicans can no longer win for federal races. Obviously, they're going to lose it in next fall as well. If this continues, Ossoff is going to win in the Senate race. But this will happen to other states. And you can't continue this. Like Lindsey Graham is a great example. The Ukraine is an issue. Israel is an issue, which demonstrates or shows this fracture in the Republican Party that has not completed its realignment. And I said on election night that was the sole job of the Republican Party when they take office, when their new majorities come in, when Donald Trump gets sworn in. Their sole job must be as follows: to rebrand the party in the image of America First and convince these voters who, by the way, voted 5 to 7 points, depending on where we're looking in the battleground areas, more for Donald Trump than they even voted for Republicans while Trump was on the ballot. They had to convince those voters and the ones that did throw their vote to them, but otherwise would not have if it wasn't for Trump being on the ballot. That group, which doesn't equal Republicans. So when you send me Harry Enthon videos showing his Republican approval is high for a second administration, first of all, this is a non-consecutive second term. It's something called voter fatigue. A consecutive second term you would expect to be lower than a non-consecutive second term. That's number one. But number two, it doesn't matter because that's not the benchmark. Trump did better with these voters than the Republican Party did. Just because he has a decently high approval than average does not mean the rest of the coalition is still on board. And that has always been the problem. Republicans have been remiss. They just can't figure it out. MAGA doesn't equal Republican, and Republican does not equal MAGA. In Pennsylvania, MAGA is 14% Democratic male. It includes a bunch of independents that never vote for Republican candidates, not for the statewide offices, not for the federal offices, not for local, nothing. And we're not just talking about young people. It could be a 55-year-old woman in the state of Ohio who has never voted before, but she voted for Donald Trump. Their sole job, even if they had to be posers for 9 months, their sole job was not to act like a freaking rhino bushy Republican for once. And just freaking pretend, man, fake it until you make it, that you actually support Donald Trump and you actually support America first. But they couldn't do it. They just couldn't. Wannabe oligarchs are going to want to be oligarch. And now here we are. Everyone's pet project. And it started, honestly, Trump's problem itself started with Mike Johnson and other people. We all know what country that's attached to. Their undue influence in U.S. politics. Convincing Donald Trump not to release the Epstein files. Listen, I have heard like 10 different stories, 2 of which are credible. Both of the reasons for why Donald Trump resisted releasing the Epstein files, which, by the way, among voters who didn't vote, is the number one reason they didn't. Not among all voters, among the ones who didn't come out. Epstein is number 1. Israel is number 2. The government shutdown was number 3. Both reasons have to do with that. And Trump mishandled it when it was an easy sidestep. He didn't even have to directly address it. All he had to do was not mishandle it like he did. Minus the inviting influencers to the White House. Binder Part 1. Minus the post on Truth Social saying, I don't want your support anymore. We're hearing that shit everywhere. When we ask what a 25-year-old male from Pennsylvania is doing, saying that he either strongly or somewhat disapproves of Trump and he's not voting in the midterms, he's pretty damn likely to say, what are you talking about? Trump told me he doesn't need my support anymore. That shit hurt. And I don't know how anyone could expect it didn't. But just focusing on Republicans, here we have Donald Trump, which is trying to fulfill a campaign promise, getting back to Ukraine. I had to lay the foundation for all of this because you had to understand what the Republican Party's main job was. But here, fast forward, we have Trump really bringing people in, calling all sorts of people, asking for all sorts of polling data. And I really do, I got to tell you, Susie Wiles gets a lot of shit. I'm going to say this out loud, and don't worry, I'm not being held hostage, or I'm not being held against my will, and no one's holding anything on me. I'm saying this as a true matter of what I believe to be true. I think her attempt to understand is real. I just think that there's a difference between wanting to understand voters and being the kind of person that actually has the ability to do that. Some of this is experience in our lives and who we are. Donald Trump is an enigma here because he has such great political instincts. But not everybody can do this. The only reason why I heard the Trump voter in 2016, which was an Obama Trump voter, is because of my own personal experience in my life. I said, you know what? Those people are real. Don't screen them out. That's one of the biggest differences between me and other public pollsters who messed up the election. I believe, honestly, it was only myself and Robert Cahaly who got that right if we polled states and national polls. I don't think there was any other pollster who did that. Both. Rasmussen polled nationally. It's just because I know what it's like to have friends who had trade jobs, who went to vocational school in high school instead of going to college. ending up learning a trade, only to realize in the early and mid 90s that it's totally effing useless because of NAFTA. And there's 100 Mexicans sitting at the 7-Eleven who will do your carpenter job, who will do your landscaping job, who will do your electrician's job without a journeyman's license, by the way, who will do your roofing job, who will do your HVAC job, and on and on and on and on for $3.50 an hour. If you haven't been around that in your life, and this is what's so amazing, if you didn't see Paul's interview with Tucker Carlson, it's interesting to listen to Paul's background because some of that stuff I didn't even know. Tucker went into detail. But who we are and how we were brought up and what experiences we have in life absolutely does matter. It does. It allows us to be able to empathize and sympathize with our fellow man when we are no longer currently in that position. And I have to say, to my great shame, in 2016, at first I didn't see it. I mean, I saw it, but I was like, what are these people whining for? I got a little bit bougie for my britches. And I needed the American public to smack me down a little bit and be like, bro, don't you remember you were born in the working class neighborhood in the 5 boroughs of New York? You were not raised bourgeoisie. And thank God they did. But Trump says, go get this deal, make it happen. No security guarantee. And fucking Marco Rubio throws a security guarantee in there. Tanks the whole thing. Still think that's a conspiracy theory? Clapping seals? This is so frustrating because even though we see, and it is declining, which is good for the White House, even though we see a very a sizable lead and majority among voters who across everywhere say that they want the administration to focus more on the domestic, all we heard over the weekend and in the days leading into midweek was how happy they were that Donald Trump was serious about getting this deal and that it was a realistic deal. It's the most popular thing he's talked about literally in months. And part of his own party is sabotaging him. The window closes after a while. The primaries are incredibly important, regardless of whether or not the president, who clearly doesn't always know what's best for himself or his voters, or what's going to become of his voters when he leaves office. These are clearly becoming, let me put it this way, issues that people are starting to think about. Even though he doesn't know what's best for him, these primaries have to be used because they're the only vehicle you have, guys. They have to be used to finish the realignment. If you don't do it, you're done. You're done. I don't know how else to tell you this. There's no next year. The rhinos think it's hilarious that Ted Cruz has been actively trying to sabotage the president since February. Now the president knows. He finally caught on. But Ted Cruz was his buddy, along with Bibi Netanyahu. No, they're not, Mr. President. You found out the hard way. And you wasted your peak presidency pushing their pet projects while Ted laughed behind your back and has been sabotaging your movement. There is no next year, Ted. You think you're going to derail the administration and derail J.D. Vance? No Republican will win in 2028. Ron DeSantis, J.D. Vance, Ted Cruz, doesn't matter. If Donald Trump fails, the administration fails, exits office, massively unpopular, no Republican will win the White House. You better roll out the red carpet for President AOC right now because that's what's going to happen. And I'm old enough myself to remember when a young guy got up at the 2008 convention for the Democrats and gave a keynote address. Back then, some of us were smart enough to realize that guy's going to run for president. Oh, you're crazy. He's not even a full-term senator. He's young. He's going against Clinton. Yeah, he whooped Clinton's ass. And the right laughed at that all the way to their great defeat. While Sean Hannity sat on primetime crying about this one was in this one's basement and this one's in this one's church and this one played around with the weather underground and This one snorted lines with his girlfriend. Nobody cares. George Bush didn't fix their problems. He made it worse, so they gave someone else another try. If right-wing populism fails here, this little plan that a wing of the Democratic Party already has laid out, which will be led by her, this little plan will work. Mark my words, it will work. And will be the laughing stock. And all the Republicans laughing about that right now, believe me, she will have the last laugh. Gavin Newsom cannot stop her. A Democratic nomination is more than 40% non-white. He cannot beat her. And let me ask you something before I bring in our guest. You think Lindsey Graham is going to stop her? You think Ted Cruz is going to stop her? You haven't been paying attention very long, apparently. But Donald Trump endorsed him. If you want to hold hands like Thelma and Louise and drive that fucking car off the cliff, knock yourself out. But that's where you're going. All right, we're going to take a 30-second break. When we come back, we'll bring in our guest. You're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. It's supposed to be a happy jovial. We'll come back in the second half. We'll be in a much better mood with Paul, and we'll discuss things and lead up to the end of the episode where we can all wish each other a very happy Thanksgiving. 30 seconds for me to get a drink of my ginger ale here. We'll be back in a hot minute. Don't forget to like the videos. I thought I knocked over my ginger ale. It was my phone. Thank God. All right. Look, let's bring in our guest, who I'm super happy to have with us today, because there's really nobody better to speak on what's going on here, not only with Ukraine, but specifically with DOGE, because just as a lead up here to bring him in, there was a Reuters article, breaking news, DOGE has disbanded. But if you really look beneath it, what happened here was yet again another messaging failure from the White House. And the reason why is because they can't really tell you the full story without it looking bad, right? But the fact of the matter is, if you think that DOGE was supposed to just take the lead for the first couple of weeks until Trump's appointees got in, and then it was just going to disperse across all the different agencies, and then that was it, and that was the sole point of it, you haven't been paying attention. And it's a tough sell because the American public doesn't really trust Trump's appointees. MAGA doesn't even trust most of Trump's appointees. So this was the most popular agenda item in the early part of the Trump administration with young MAGA, who Donald Trump is suffering with right now pretty badly. So let me bring him in, and he'd know his support is all young. Paul Dance. I mean, don't you find it a little surprising, brother? First of all, thank you for joining Inside the Numbers. I appreciate you doing this. I really do appreciate it. I know it's the day before Thanksgiving, and it's not easy. All right. So first of all, how you been?
Great. I mean, I think this is actually the quintessential American holiday, so I'm honored. If there was ever a point we need to take stock of our nation, it's today and tomorrow. But look, I mean, this is a struggle of our time. What I'm doing running against Lindsey Graham is the future of MAGA. This is a steel cage match to take down this rhino. And our whole movement, the one I gave the last 11 years of my life, I worked at Trump 45. I was the #1 appointee. I took over a federal agency at OPM. And then I went and fought for the president in Georgia in 2020, and then went on to put those lessons in work of Project 2025. That is the plan to take down the administrative state. And to let the thing get sabotaged like this when we're so close, no way. I'm standing up, and I really respect the patriots getting behind me.
I mean, they're there, right? Like, there's a DOGE agency. The truth is they renamed a previous agency, but to act and pretend, Paul, like this wasn't a huge part of the Project 2025 plan, and that this was just supposed to go this way, is disingenuous. Musk ran afoul. Most people I speak to will say, hey, you got to talk to Besson. That's what they tell me. Look, what happened here with Musk? Who drove the wedge? Who pushed him out? Because Musk's team is so critical. His talent is so critical. His expertise is so. And when I say, look, how did this really go awry? Most people will say you got to talk to Scott Besson. And I don't know. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Look, I'm a big friend of Scott Besson's. I actually helped him get that job and worked with a neighbor of mine in Charleston. And I'm a huge fan of Elon. And to see that breakup, to me, it bespeaks kind of the management of the inner circle. Like, I worked in the admin, and then I later stood up a coalition of 110 kind of fighting organizations, but we agreed on 70%. And that's really the challenge there, to keep the coalition working along. Certainly, I think of DOGE in a way as, Project 2025 was the concept car, right? It was this idea that we were going to reform the administrative state, deconstruct it, and make serious cuts. And DOGE was maybe one of the first off the production line of it. Cooler in some sense, a lot of things we didn't think about. But I kind of say that all that brouhaha about Project 2025, those guys who own X and all the tech bros, they're like, what's this that the left is losing their minds over? Oh, a plan to make things more efficient, streamlined, using modern day tools and letting the private sector thrive. I'm in. So look, I think it was a derivative of our work. Where it got kind of caught in the gears is that you need this kind of understanding of the law, kind of understanding the culture of the government, and also just kind of just a solid, almost blockheaded ambition to just keep plowing forward. And I may have all three of those in some regard, but look, it's still the time to make it happen. We need a DOGE 2.0. When Elon was kind of pushed out of the inner circle there, a lot of us said, well, we had a chance for generational control to actually take this thing down. One of the most successful guys, if not the most successful on the planet, is like intuiting our ideas. I mean, he was literally sleeping on the floor in my old office, right? No one had heard of OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, until I wrote Project 2025. And I said, personnel is policy. This is where the hardwiring, the CPU of the deep state is in this HR department of the federal government. And that's also why things are going awry now today. They still have not internalized that personnel as policy. They don't have people on the field right now.
That's so key. And I think that's what I was trying to explain to Paul Bedard in the Washington Examiner about the polling surrounding this, is that maybe you just said it and you just articulated it and put it in this very easy packaged way for people to understand. But voters intuitively know that. And because they don't trust all of Trump's appointees, there's a few that they absolutely love and they know they're working hard. Gabbard does very well, right? Especially with that. And we are studying that group of people, Paul. I don't want to say some people matter more than others, but the fact of the matter is the Republicans have a voting base. Trump has a voting base. It's not enough. You need these other people, especially, and they're so much younger. So many of the people who support you, there's all this overlap here. They understand what you just said. Like, look, it's not just the guy at the top. It has to be this, like, we have to start making progress. And it has, and Elon was viewed as, but if you're 50 and below, you still liked Elon, even when his numbers went south. His numbers went south during that time because a bunch of boomers were believing Democratic talking points that he was going to take their personal data and he was going to hurt their Social Security and he was going after this. Elon Musk was so critical, along with Donald Trump, in like making being a Republican cool again. And they 100%. Trusted him, Paul, so to sideline him like this and not have a message and explain this to the voters was just devastating.
No, he had, and I'll tell you why that happened, but he had a way of, in real time, almost over the course of a weekend, pulling out data, answers that would have taken us 6 months to a year. We get the runaround and that he was able to kind of use AI tools and tap into it and say these things are just undefensible. Even if you're on the left, you're like, okay, there's millions of dollars going to this person to do nothing, let alone billions. But, the idea of finally tracking the money from the literal taxpayer's pocket till it gets expended and whether anything gets done for it is really a promise. I'm not a huge fan of AI, but that's one of the major ones. But look, here's the seminal part of taking over an agency: bodies. You need to swarm the zone, flood the zone. And that was the promise, Project 2025. People probably know the federal government's 2.2 million workers. The president appoints 4,000. And, in the past, the president only appointed 2,500. Some of these people were Bush retreads. Some of them were just flat in the way of Trump. And a few of us got in there in 45 and changed it. Like, I moved the hiring time. They were allowing the career people to pick out who was going to serve as a political. It was taking 9 months. Look, I got 2 degrees from MIT. I went to the University of Virginia. I solved the $27 billion litigation. They're putting me 9 months to come in and take a job at HUD to take a 90% pay cut. And they did it to everybody. We changed the hiring from 9 months to a week. And we brought in the people finally. And that's actually how the Democrats did it. But you have to start at first principles. Why is it 4,000 in the first place? That's an architecture put up by the deep state. When the civil service was put in effect in 1883, the Pendleton Act, only 10% of the jobs were consecrated to those career protections. Now, fast forward 100 years later, after progressive government, 99.7% are consecrated. And in fact, when they review themselves, they give themselves grades of successfully performing or better 99.7% of the time. So that's what we get for $7 trillion. It takes somebody to go and roll up his sleeves and get into an agency, not go on Fox News, but actually dig down. And look, I can't say how much damage somebody like a Howard Lutnick did to, he just waylaid Project 2025 at a critical time. Now let's back up. This guy is next door neighbors. I don't know if everyone knows, to Jeffrey Epstein. Yes, 20 years. You can look up that incident. And he may have, in fact, reportedly bought his house from Epstein. But I digress. But look, he was definitely one of Hillary Clinton's biggest fundraisers in 2016. And now this guy is running transition and taking it over from those of us who had actually seen the problem, diagnosed it, and done it. So look, we had 20,000 people, patriots from all over. I bet some of the people listening to this are in that database. The Washington does not drain itself. We wanted people from all over the U.S. to come in and serve. They're very capable attorneys listening to this broadcast, and that's what we needed. So right now, they're all sidelined. This takes a new doubling down of bringing in personnel and agency heads or deputy administrators who are going to actually take things over. And I can explain to you what's going on in DOJ in a second.
Yeah, I just want to before we do that, I just want to back up and explain to people what you just said. So the president of the United States, our extension of the sovereign voter, and our only elected representative in the executive branch, has only 4,000 posts. I mean, you said it right. I mean, this is a design that is on purpose. It's made bureaucracy as a way of perpetuating itself. This is part of that. And that Jim Garfield, who was, of course, was killed before he was able to do any of those reforms, Chester B. Arthur, who would later do that. This is not what they had in mind, Paul. And then even FDR would have been terrified. And this is, FDR is considered, to me, I consider him like a radical.
The Civil Act was stood up by Jimmy Carter in 78. It was still bipartisan, but look, you're exactly right. The people who go in there get chewed up like a piece of meat. Who wants to do that? Like people like me, okay? I'm here to save the country, but very few. But it can, if you have the right top cover in the admin to help those people out, they can do a lot of good work. And that's what we're able to do at OPM and the White House Office of Presidential Personnel in 45. But look, the
top
reality, people get in there. These are donors. It seems like a little bit of a frolic and detour, coming, go to Washington cocktail parties by night and kind of sign things by day, never really getting your hands dirty. That's what the deep state wants. They love that because they do all the work and they're like, madam, sir, you need to sign this. Don't worry, we got you. And they take care of the people. They make them look smart. And that's really the sin of the whole thing, is a lot of people are being propped up because they're lazy. They're intellectually lazy. And look, it's going to take kind of reordering. I think that people in, what's happened now that has cracked our movement in two is emblematic of what's going wrong. We need to have those reformers. Like the clock, like you said, it could be a month from now where the hourglass is empty.
Yes.
This is not 4 years. And now it's 2 years. We're planning what happens after Trump. And June 9th, 2026, that's my primary. Go to Paul Dan, support me, sign up to volunteer. Give us, this is
we're
where you
out
have
of time, guys. We're out of time. I don't mean to stop in the middle of his tracks because he's obviously telling you, his pitch, and you should listen to him. We're out of time. We're out of time. Like, this is something, I think some of it is subversion with all of these people on X and on Fox News. Some of it is subversion, attacking me for, power to panic in, right? No, this is how DC works. That's not the only panicking you'll find in DC now, Paul, are incumbent Republicans. The people who are shooting flares in the air months ago are not noobs. They know how this works. A lot of and that's the other side. Some of it's subversion. Other is that's part of a new movement. You bring in new people and they're very gung-ho, but they're also naive and they don't know how Washington, D.C. works. So they didn't really understand, while you're over there bombing Iran and then wasting, because I'm looking at the White House schedule, you're wasting 6 weeks after the bombing on Iran with Iran, right? And dealing with nothing with the MAGA agenda. And Donald Trump should know better. He's done this before. He's been through this before, Paul. That's what frustrates a lot of people. And frankly, it even frustrates me. He should know better. He got screwed the last time we were at this point in Trump 1.0. He wanted the wall done. He wanted the bill passed. McCarthy and Ryan told him, well, we can't do that right now. Just sign this omnibus bill, and then we're going to campaign. And right before the midterms, we'll get you your wall. They were lying. Nothing got done. Nothing got done except for what Trump did by executive order, which was all reversed later by Joe Biden. So it's like they're all sitting there. They could deal with judiciary reform, Paul. They could deal with all of these things you just brought up, dealing with the deep state. I was just looking at something before with the Ukraine deal. Look, these people think that they can derail the president's peace process and leak next call. I mean, it's just outrageous. The president and the team, the negotiating, they've got to be able to negotiate in good faith and confidence. This is outrageous.
It's upsetting. And, if you want to look at public enemy number one, it's Lindsey Graham.
It is.
Quite frankly, this is a guy who not only upset it back with the minerals deal, like he famously was palling around with the Democrats and Zelensky hours before the meeting in the Oval, telling them don't take the deal. They literally had the hors d'oeuvres set out there and they had to wheel it back in. But then he goes to Kiev, or Kyiv as they like to say now. And by the way, it was just reported, I believe he spent 7 trips or 9 trips there last year. And no, actually, I'm correct. That's Israel. I'm getting the two confused. The diary of Netanyahu just came out, and it shows that basically they're just phone pals, or worse, they're just always over there palling around. But look, with Lindsey Graham going over there with Zelensky and basically lecturing the president of the United States and saying, I have a veto proof majority bill about Russian sanctions. It's like, you're not president of the United States, dude. No one elected you that. And now you're really crossing over into a separation of powers issue. And, look, here at home, we're sick of it. Like, our roads are 50 out of 50 in the country. This guy just shows up every 6 years and thinks he's entitled to this. And I hear it from the kids on the ground. No one, the Israel thing is very, very unpopular. And, kind of the thinking of the establishment is like, oh, that's nice. Those folks don't vote. So, look, if people are listening, I'll give you a homework project for this weekend. And your kids who are home, get them registered to vote. The good ones, the ones who are listening to Rich Barris. The other ones, not so much. But, register them to vote and tell them this is important. You can go to our website, pauldans.com. We'll send you directions for any people in South Carolina. But this is all patriots on deck.
You gotta vote, guys.
He has $15 million from foreign interests. I'll leave it there. But this is going to be kind of patriots chipping in $20, $5, $100 from all over the country to get this done. And we're going to get it done. The numbers are really building. And that's why, the president had his first fundraiser, for Lindsey Graham, yes. And he didn't do it in South Carolina. He did it on a golf course in Florida. So they know that his numbers are catastrophic for a sitting senator.
Meanwhile, Michael Whatley, who we polled last week, is 8 points behind Roy Cooper. They have to figure out something else they're going to do in North Carolina too, because Whatley's not going to catch up, brother. He's just not. He's too vanilla. I'm sure he's a very nice guy, but this is not what he's built for. He was told by Trump because Laura didn't want to do it, and he said, all right, whatever you need me to do, boss. Like, that is not what this party needs right now. They need firebrands. Frankly, there were other people. I really would implore them to consider getting in the race, because Whatley is going to lose. Mark my words. Michael Whatley is going to lose. I don't want Roy Cooper to be my senator from North Carolina. I don't want it. So I'm trying. I mean, I've never seen a deficit among independents like this. And it's because everyone just sees him as like this vanilla cookie cutter kind of whatever. What happens when Donald Trump is out of office? Somebody like him, he's a junior. If he were to even win, would be a junior senator. He'd the neighbor to the south. If Lindsey Graham, God forbid, gets reelected, we'll have him under his thumb and under his armpit in a second. The two of them will be sending billions of dollars in foreign aid to every shit show, third world country all around the globe, spending all of our future. I mean, it's not, they need to reassess what they're going to do here. But you just said Israel. I'm just going to put it up. I mean, this is huge. This poll we did is like mind blowing poll. Look at young MAGA.
Yeah. I hear it every day when I'm out there with the folks under 30. They can't, they've had their inheritance ripped away from them.
Yep.
They don't know when they'll ever be able to buy a house, let alone get married or live even a quarter of the lifestyle their parents did. And they're mad, and rightfully so. But the preoccupation with Israel, this Lindsey Graham is just flat out now. He's going there with the Republican Jewish coalition.
I got a clip I want to play.
That's
yep.
how.
Go ahead. Good. I was just gonna say, I got a clip of that. Go ahead though. Finish your thought.
Yeah. So that's Halloween night, folks. Okay, in Vegas, and that's a Friday, which I didn't know. A lot of observant Jews are out there on Friday, but like that's Sin City, and this guy gets up, and he appears to be drunk, in my estimation.
He's drunk.
In my humble opinion, but he is saying we're killing all the right people. And we're cutting your taxes. That's the future of the Republican Party. And if you listen to my interview with Tucker, which is a great listen, it gives you my background. But like Tucker's right, this is not the future of the party. No one signed up for this. This is not how I live. I mean, look, I'm a practicing Christian, and the fifth commandment, "Thou shalt not kill." It's like anybody who's being that callous about the millions. I mean, Ukraine ground up millions of Orthodox Christians to their death, and Lindsey Graham went and said, best money we ever spent. We're killing Russians. Yep. And then, he like basically with J6 protesters, he says, should have shot more of those people in the head. This is someone who's demented, folks. Like, it's time for him to go. And that's why we need the help. But like a vote for Lindsey Graham, God save us. That's World War III. We're going to have a kinetic World War III. We're also going to get Gramnesty. I mean, this guy, like L. Rushville had it right. He was tagging this guy as Gramnesty decades ago. Mm-hmm. He's been in Washington 32 years before any of these folks who were in the poll were even born.
I'm telling you, I can't say much more than this. But I'm telling you, Lindsey is working on a Gramnesty again. And he's not the primary guy, but he's been spoke to about it. He's good with it. He's on board. And if the president doesn't come up with an alternative, this is what they will try to push when they feel Donald Trump is weak. All right. So which they feel he is now. By the way, he's just
getting. Make one point of clarification. These were premature endorsements of Lindsey Graham. The president gave it to him back in February with the idea that he'd keep people out. Like I'm nothing if not courageous, and I dropped my hat in the ring in August. But to see him getting this nomination, I'm like, no way. This is the whole future of our movement. And I'll be damned if I'm going to sit on the sidelines. I got 4 kids. We got number 5 on the way here, and my whole family in South Carolina. I have a stake in the future of this country. Yep. This man, 70 years old, childless, warmonger. Okay. He is just there for his notation in the history books. And now it seems like, he's basically, I don't know, taken over by some weird spirits. I mean, but the fixation.
Well, he's drunk. You're right, though. He's drunk. And I'm going to play this clip right now. He's drunk, Paul. Again, this is a guy. Think about how long he's been in Washington, D.C. He is a drunk. I don't know why we're not allowed to say these things out loud. I mean, this is something we have to pop the veil of like what isn't okay and isn't like allowed to be said. Well, I mean, what's he going to do? Tell everybody who everyone knows he is. How many years he's been in DC drunk and making a fool of himself and potentially compromising himself in front of horrible people. This is what you guys maybe need to think about at home. If he's a slush all the time, everywhere, how many people has he accidentally said something to with a bad, like somebody who should not have heard it standing 5 feet away? Like, I mean,
you're saying that he could be compromised and foreign powers could be having leverage over him?
100%.
But listen, I'm not to talk about that, Rich. We are going to get into that. This campaign is going to go there, and it's going to go to everything. You know, he has. Let's put it this way: an alternative lifestyle. He believes in killing instead of America first. But look, this is what 32 years in Washington does. Power corrupts absolutely. And President Trump is entitled to have friendships with golf buddies, but we're not doing this here in South Carolina again. The people back home, just so people know listening, they hate Lindsey on the ground here. He was booed for 6 minutes straight. Look at the rally in Pickens, July 3rd, 2023, when the president was just announcing his run. And 6 minutes straight, people literally turning their backs on him. That carried over to Somerville, it carried over to Columbia. And that's why the man never shows up in person. Yep. And certainly the president is going to have to think twice before he comes on stage with that guy.
Let me play this because I want people to see this if they haven't seen this. First of all, Paul's being nice. This is what Lindsey Graham looks and sounds like when he's drunk. He's drunk. All right. And then secondly, listen to what he says. And I'm going to tell you what I think it sounds like. Okay, let's play it.
Recognize Jerusalem as capital of Israel. Why? Because if you got a problem with that, take it up with God. He's the guy that did it, not Trump. So I just want to say, I feel good about the Republican Party. I feel good about where we're going as a nation. We're killing all the right people and we're cutting your taxes. This capital.
All right, let me just. Sorry. I messed it up, but it doesn't matter. I mean, there it is. We're killing all the right people and we're cutting your taxes, guys. That's George W. Bush. That was George W. Bush's platform as a neocon after he failed to deliver on what he initially ran as, which sounded a lot like America First, by the way. His original campaign when he beat McCain in 2000. Paul, that's George Bush. We're going back to George Bush.
Well, you say, like, who is the we in this, Senator Graham? Like, the U.S. Congress has not declared war on anybody. Are you talking about the Israelis, killing the kids in Gaza? Are you talking about the grinding of the Russians by Ukraine? I mean, what is the we? The bombing of the Venezuelans? Like, are we behind it? And obviously, he goes on to do some other abuse where he basically threatens anybody who doesn't give complete fealty to Israel. And, and he says, if you stand up, he's basically attacking me. And look, I am, let's be clear, I am very supportive of the Jewish people and, a fan of Israel. But look, I'm America first. Everything comes through this prison. This is how what is best to allow the man or woman here on the street, the one at the QT, the one in the grocery store line, to thrive in South Carolina. That's what my animating prism is always. And, I took a lot of that incoming from Project 2025. Joe Biden got up there as president of the United States, and he said that same terrible rhetoric. Project 2025 is deadly serious, and we're going to stop them. That guy tweeted, the president of the United States tweeted that out July 12th, 2024. The next day, President Trump was almost assassinated in Butler, PA. So that's the president of the United States. Like, this call for violence in the wake of Charlie Kirk. I mean, can you get a grip? I mean, it would be one thing to say the guy's drunk, but look, now he's not going to get reelected on this. We can talk about what Lindsey's law is, but this is the audacious bid to stuff tens of millions of dollars in his own pocket. And I mean, the best thing you could claim is that he was wildly drunk when he went on Fox News and said he wanted to grab tens of millions of taxpayer dollars. Somehow that was going to stop Comey and the rest of the gang from ever doing it again.
They don't care about lawfare. He's going to make them like pay. He's going to make them pay, pay him personally as a price for. I mean, it's just, dude. He's sadistic. He's sadistic, Paul. Like, there's something wrong with this man. I mean, and he's happy about
years. Like, he was head of the Judiciary Committee, right? There's a great clip in Maria Bartiromo where she's like hitting him in 19. You said you were going to write a strongly worded letter. You said you were going to do this. You said, and he's like, I don't want to interfere with an ongoing criminal investigation. You are a separate, coordinate branch of government, Senator. This is your job to do oversight. You're not interfering with a criminal investigation. You're hiding behind it, and you're running cover for those people. The fact that Comey walked, yes, it's incompetence by the DOJ right now, and they don't have the staff on the ground, but it's also incompetence by Lindsey Graham, because he never put the screws to that guy when he could have brought him under subpoena, and all of those charges got time barred. So it's like, this is a guy who has sat on his hands his entire time, who's actually with them, with the Uniparty, and it's time to throw him out. But don't, get upset about Lindsey. The best thing to do is get behind me. I didn't realize I'm not a politician. I heard these folks go on the radio for years and said, send me money. I'm like, geez, there is some sort of grift. It's like, no, it's real. Like, I have to pay people to get the message out, but the message is really resonating. We're going to do this. And we've had some very good polling showing our numbers double in 7 weeks. There's a huge appetite for this, and people just have never believed that someone was going to stand up to this guy. We got Boss Hogg down here. I'm going to run him out of the county.
Yeah, I actually was thinking about dipping back in there. And for full disclosure, I have, conducted a poll for Paul, which everyone in their mother knows at this point. So it doesn't matter. But I might as well say it again. But I'm actually curious since the Tucker thing, because, we have metrics. We're always looking, Paul. I mean, you can see it on Google Trends. So, my finger was on the clone survey trigger the other day, because we're doing all of these different states. And I was thinking, we're asking a bunch of Senate races. And so it would have fallen in the purview, so I really thought about it, because you've gained a lot of traction since we've done that, which is what you had to do when we did that. Right. Yeah. I mean, that was something we talked about quite a bit. Like, look, the message is working, and you got to build. That's how you win. You just got to keep building and building and building. And the Tucker interview, which apparently was top secret, was a big deal. I mean,
I also
I didn't know he was going to endorse you like that.
Yeah, no, he gave me Tucker. Gave me his an endorsement. He's like, thank you. And look, this. First time I met Tucker, and within a minute, I told him I was from South Carolina. He's like, Lindsey Graham wanted to kill me. So, this guy has had his number, Lindsey Graham's number, for a long time, and realizes, this is one of the worst. This is why we have the Uniparty elite, and this is why we're running in motion.
He's obstructing the realignment
in this country. Is in the next year, really to have me win in June. We will win in November. Look, a Republican will carry this. It's just a question of who is the next U.S. senator. Is it Lindsey or is it me? And but it won't be a Democrat. Don't worry about that. But right now, everything lays in the balance. With Lindsey, that endorsement is dispiriting the people listening to this broadcast who live out, in Jersey, who live in Florida, who live in Nevada, who live in these swing states. But think about the people in Illinois who are listening, man. Those people have been just wailed on for decades, and this is the sort of thing that makes you just throw your hands up at politics. Go, we sent you for accountability, and to be botching it like right now, how it's going down, it needs serious course correction.
On top of the bad policy and the generational change also has to need to happen. We cannot continue to have these 80-year-old senators who still think everything is the lessons of Munich and the myth of appeasement. And we have to get rid of that. Read a book, Senator Jack Snyder, Myths of Empire. You are in a generational myth believing system, and you can't break out. But on top of the bad policy, he and people like him are preventing the freaking realignment from completing.
Well, look, Grassley's he's a gentleman. He's somebody, I love Iowa, the Midwest, but he shouldn't be in the U.S. Senate anymore, really, and because his conception changed years ago. He held up a lot of the appointments, and that would have let us move more quickly. When they fell for shutting down the government, and I think, I'm no McCarthy fan, but he made this point the other day. It's like, you're playing into their hands.
Yeah.
You took a 2-month vacation in the House of Representatives. When you're on the field, that's like you have, I don't know, in soccer or lacrosse, you're man up and you are not driving the goal. You're just like hanging around at midfield or something. Like, what's going on here?
Yep.
But the point is, like, the Maha, look at Maha, right? We need clean food. We were mandated. That's part of the coalition. Robert Kennedy, get out of his way. I'm a dad of 4, and I live with a Maha, one of the great influencers, my wife, Ballet Beautiful, Mary Helen. She's a ballerina, but she's so much into this. And look, I mean, the only benefit, and I'll say my advisor said I can't talk about it. So I'm going to talk really quickly about it. But the shutdown skies, I was out there going to buy the turkey stuff today. By the way, my read on turkey was the one I was buying, the all natural was at least 20 or maybe 30% more.
Oh God, yes.
I'm looking at these planes and they're just going across with their chemtrails. And I'm just like, for 2 months, we had blue skies. And, I talked to my friends in the DOD and they're like, yeah, that's DARPA. And like, well, we have political appointees. No, we don't have any political appointees over in DARPA. We have 4 political appointees in the FBI. What are you doing?
Let's get into the Justice Department too, because you're a lawyer, which is like a benefit here to discuss everything. Because I know you wanted to get into it. I'm not sure. I'll give you free reign, and because there's so much to talk about. I'm not sure which element you were talking about, but I am at the point now where, and I've always been here, but part of it is the restriction or the limitation of the appointee process, right? And how the system of government works. But I was never bullish on the concept of reforming the DOJ or reforming the FBI. I mean, the big beautiful bill got rid of the tax on firearms, right? So I don't know if people are familiar with this, and gun owners of America are suing because Pam Bondi decided to take basically what is like an Obama on steroids position about why that is still constitutional, and they'll still enforce that and it stays in effect. But that's a separate issue. The point is, the entire justification for a bureau like the ATF is out the window now. Get rid of the damn agency. Like, maybe Republicans overpromised here, Paul, because I just don't see, people want these things gone. They actually don't want them reformed. We've been through that, and I don't want to give up. I don't want to give up polling data before it's time to give it up. But people will see really soon. They don't think they can be reformed.
Look, we don't even have people with the stones in the U.S. Congress and Senate who would act to actually close. Famously, Lindsey was fighting making DOGE cut permanent, let alone stripping the mandates, the enabling legislation for various departments. But here's what's going on with a DOJ, and really nothing's going on. All these agencies are designed to run themselves. Okay, it's autopilot. It's actually a Tesla self-driving car, and very few people can get in there and change it. First, like I was saying with Project 2025, the key principle was personnel is policy. You're always going to have to start with the person who is ready to roll up his or her sleeves, and go at it and really kind of take the heat. And that's, here's what's going on DOJ. They literally have the same assistant secretary for administration. Okay. I believe her name is Jolene Loria. You can look it up. She was appointed by, yes, hold your breath, Joe Biden in December 2023. She is in charge of HR. That's all the hiring. She's in charge of the budget. She's the chief financial officer. She's in charge of the facilities. She is in charge of the IT. She is in charge of the ethics. They haven't lifted a finger at trying to reform that agency. That would have been a day one thing where you put in a MAGA person who's going to get reformed. And how does that manifest? Look at somebody like Ed Martin. Like, he's a great patriot, and the president keeps putting more things on his plate. And guess what? Ed Martin, you know how many people work for him? 0. Because he can't even get a budget over there and people to staff it. Look, there's something called Schedule C. It's unbounded. The president in the DOJ with the right person in charge of the budget and the CFO is under the CFO Act. We're supposed to be political. Like, this is a travesty. That person's supposed to be political, but the budget and HR and ethics are the entire basis of a law firm. If you've ever worked in a law firm, that's how the whole thing is controlled. So like Ed Martin, like the president should be told, no, there's no staffing going on because, somebody between Ed Martin and the president is holding it up. And I'll leave that for later discussion, but don't expect there to be a weaponization committee. Don't expect them to, look, they bobbled the whole thing with Letitia James. That's not Ed Martin's problem. I mean, he's already doing that and pardons and this, but he needs support, and it's time. That's the travesty of Howard Lutnick knocking the 20,000 lawyers. What we don't have on our team are solid lawyers who are going to fight for the country. They're out there, but they're in private practice. They need to be activated and inspired to come to Washington. That's what we did. And when we got knocked and Lutnick got up there and said, don't bother sending your resumes in, they just turned the DOJ back over to Biden. And guess what, folks? It's going to flip on us, and they're going to persecute us worse than the 2020-2024 window. So this is critical.
Yeah. That's why I say, a big part too of this whole concern about being out of time is not just the future of the movement. It's the future of the people who have been carrying the banners of the movement. Because if this isn't dealt with, Bannon has always been, he was right about this from the beginning. It's great. Yeah, we won. And if we don't succeed next time, we're done. They're going to come hot and heavy. And by that time, people will be conditioned, unfortunately, to accept a certain level of persecution. This entire election was refuting that. And if they don't react accordingly, Americans are just going to put it on a shelf, Paul. That's my concern.
No one voted to see Jamie Dimon. With all due respect, he seems like a nice guy, but him and Bill Gates and the rest of the gang crowding into the dinner at the White House. It's like to see, and that is like a function of that. Many of the people involved in transition were still lobbyists, right? Go and look at who was making money off this. There's an incredible article in the New York Times that showed you all the money that a lot of the people in the Trump White House made before going into these positions, some of whom cabinet officials paid $400,000 for their jobs. I'll leave it there today. That's reported by the New York Times. Interesting research for those in May. But look, this when you're knocking somebody like MTG, I'm sorry. The first time I met MTG was in the trenches in 2020 in Buckhead, Georgia. All right, that woman had just won her race for Congress without the president's endorsement. Everybody else had cut bait on the president. We were digging out there, and guess where she was on a Sunday morning? She was trying to get answers. She wasn't up in Washington, like washing her hands of the president, measuring drapes. So, yes, I know that she has off and on things, but her heart is with this. And, to see her, Elon, Massey, these guys who are on our side, not on everything, but like, that's the job of kind of the people below the president to continue to keep this coalition in place. And you have to be, kind of a parent, if you will. Like, you can't have the siblings fighting. And that, that's where I feel like we need to see a lot more olive branch and thank yous. Like, this never would have happened if people like her, like Tucker, hadn't been keeping the flame going in 2021. Like, we were all going to get extinguished, folks. He was the sole person who would go on and read those rants, and basically when we were basically being persecuted underground. So
I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for Tucker. I don't know if everyone knows this watching, but This is why all of this stuff is like deeply personal to me, because I ended up on these government lists. I was removed from X. Jim Jordan, you'd never get it from Lindsey Graham, even though he had the power to get this information. He did nothing. Jim Jordan got it, and I got my hands on it a while ago, before it had even, gone public. I knew before it was public that I was on the list. All I did was respond to allegations about some of the voter fraud claims in 2020. We did a scientific study, pulling random samples from voter files and seeing who did or did not cast absentee ballots with change of address flags, or whether or not they were, it could be anything. And this isn't many, folks, like suspected deceased, confirmed deceased. That's not many. The real low-hanging fruit for fraud is in unsolicited absentee ballots, and the absentee ballot affidavit when your address doesn't match. That's where the problem was, at least in like states like Michigan. If it wasn't for Tucker, I wouldn't be here right now. They removed me and all of my businesses from social media. I was watching television with my kids. I think we were watching like Hallmark movies, and Steve Bannon messages me and he's like, "You're a legend." And I said, "Oh, what happened? What's going on?" And Poso messaged me and he's like, "You're gone, bro. They vaporized you. You're nowhere." And I'm like, what? I mean, just in a millisecond, and it wasn't just me, it was all the businesses. And that day, Tucker Carlson called, who I didn't even know. And we had like a, 10, 15-minute conversation on air, but we had a big conversation before the show. And within 40 minutes of that program airing, I was back. And if it wasn't for Tucker, I'd be done, Paul. I'd be done. Understand what I'm saying?
These are the guys who kept that engine room going in the heavy seas, and
when no one had the balls.
Look, the people right now have this pinnacle. They're at the top. I think they got to the top of the mountain, and they're downhill skiing, and they're like kind of like sneezing at the rest of us who were like walking up the hill with the MAGA light the whole time, and making it happen. Project 2025. Look, if you like what Trump's done, I spent the last 3 years kissing my wife and kids goodbye every Monday at 4 a.m., going up to the swamp, working at Heritage Foundation, bringing together 100 groups, laying out personal and policy modules that could run day one to get plugged in. Our book went right over to the Trump campaign, first 6 copies of it, in fact, and that got completely put in the bloodstream. That's 20 million downloads later. I wrote down Deconstruct the Administrative State. Most of you had never even heard the Administrative State. That's because Paul Dan took a Bannonism and I put it in that book and formatted it that way. I said, restore the family as the centerpiece of American life. And that became another one of our guiding factors. Protect our sovereignty, borders, and wealth. And finally, reanimate our God-given rights. Okay, I put God-given rights. Now these are kind of the building blocks, if you will, of that Trump campaign, but they're not necessarily being instituted correctly. They're very popular. They're great for a press release. They're great for an executive order. But who is actually battening down the hatches and doing all the spade work to make these things permanent? And that's where we worry. But look, it's still reversible. I don't want to doom everybody here. Black pill on a look. You think we have it tough? Look, think about those pilgrims 250 plus years ago, 300 years ago.
I was going to,
I'm sitting here talking to you, and I have kids, and we're living well. So, but we have to always respect that it's on us. This is our moment in time, and if you can't just sit on the sidelines. If I think about the parable of the 3 servants, like, did you go and put your denarii in the ground, or did you invest it? And throw me a denarii or 2. I'm going to make life better for your kids going forward. And that's what I'm asking. Go to pauldans.com, invest in us, follow us, make calls for us, just push the message out. That's, just retweet us. We're Paul Dans for Senate on X and pretty much every social platform.
Spread the signal, amplify the message. That's what he's saying here, folks. I want to read you something, because you did bring it up right at the beginning of the interview. So I want to, this is obviously, we have Thanksgiving tomorrow, and I don't think we speak enough about when Thanksgiving actually occurred, the history. We obviously talk about the Pilgrims, of course. It was a very harrowing story about how the Pilgrims cast off what was a temporary attempt at collectivism. It almost killed them. And it led to William, Bradford making reforms, which were very much in line with the Protestant ethic, which is obviously one of the pillars of their worldview, which led to one of the pillars of our founders' worldview. But Thanksgiving itself did not come about until 1863, when President Lincoln, right, he proclaimed the National Day of Thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent Father who dwelleth in the heavens. And what he was, I mean, so beautiful. If you guys go and look at the remarks, they're beautiful, they're elegant. Times of tragedy. I mean, like you said, we don't want a black pill. Look at what they were dealing with. I mean, the nation was being torn apart, and he was basically saying that we should give thanks regardless of all of it, that we live in this nation. It's blessed by God. As long as we bless God, as long as we acknowledge him, of course, it's blessed by God. And, that's been able to cradle this idea that America was and now has become a nation. And it's been able to give us an environment, conducive to liberty and prosperity. And it was still just those things alone, in the midst and the turmoil of everything that they were dealing with. That was enough still to say, look, but you know what? We still have it better than everybody else, and thank God for it. I mean, it's really something. Thanksgiving is an overlooked, Paul. It's an overlooked message. It really is. I mean, it's great.
Rather be poor and free, but look, if you go back, and I actually held a Thanksgiving event for the guys involved in Project 2025 in November 2022, and we invited Mark Meadows to speak. And turns out he's like, I started reading a poem of the first Thanksgiving of, I don't know if it was Miles Standish, but another. And lo and behold, that was like his 11th great grandfather, and he told the same story. So what I'm trying to say is like, everyone suffered and died and sacrificed for you here today. And whether your family just came a generation ago or they date back to the Pilgrims, we owe them this sacrifice. They always were reassuring themselves when they're taking that final breath, at least my kids are going to be better. So I think we keep that in mind. I think we have to be happy warriors. We have to enjoy times. This is the family. This is the moment you spend time with your family, and don't let them take that away from you. And if I'm black pilled, look, there's a solution for this, and we're going to do it. I want people to understand that we are absolutely going to win this race, and the numbers are looking good, and there's just a continued build online. So, and I would make a joke that I do owe the Pilgrims. I married a Protestant here as a Catholic. I go to reach for a bottle of wine. I'm reminded that there's still that kind of that streak going on in our household. So, God bless them, and what the order that they put in really has endured, and it was a genius. And we are a nation under God. And I think that's what's so critical, not to co-opt this messaging and try to say, back to the Israel thing and Lindsey Graham, like, that's not the God I worship, saying, killing all the right people. I don't know how that squares with the man upstairs. And, if you vote for that dude, one day we're going to meet our maker, and you're going to have to explain, why you set millions of Christians against millions of Christians in a bloodbath. And, when they break that fifth seal, those people are coming for you. So
you're a believer. You better believe that. And I will say, listen, I'm going to say this, and I don't reveal this very much. But I do know, I don't like to do what everyone else is doing in the wake of Charlie's murder, his assassination. But I will say this, because I feel like I'd have his blessing to do this. This race was very important to him. He was, from the very beginning, Rich, this guy's got to go. Who we got to get to replace him? And this was, I mean, it was at the forefront. It was one of the last conversations we had. It's one of the, the first post 2024 interviews we did. I mean, it was a big, big deal to him. And going to what you had just said before, I can tell you that the death toll, the chaos and the death and the suffering that's being brought in the Middle East right now isn't only coming down to bear on like Islamo-fascists. You know, I mean, there were 20 children killed in that church, Paul. That was a Christian church. There were 20 children. Charlie had a very, very hard time. And I know we discussed it. He had a very hard time swallowing that. That was a moment. I think, you know what I'm saying?
I think Charlie was prophetic. You know, I think he was. He reminded us that we never know the day or the hour, and that we have to get right with God. We have to start living virtuously. I will remind people that 3 weeks before he was assassinated, he was here in South Carolina saying, "You deserve a new U.S. senator." And he was on in the summer saying Lindsey Graham is the worst. Turning Point Action is going to run out these rhinos, and Lindsey Graham's the worst of them. So, like, if you want to honor Charlie's memory, give us a boost. This is the best way to send them, some love upstairs. But this
he wanted him gone, Paul.
That's the truth. Country. He's fighting it, and guess what? This is the time-tested way that our country got built in the first place, and we need to go back to first principles.
He wanted him gone. That's the truth. And as much as I've been like guarding especially our last conversations together, I've been guarding them. Some of this stuff really kind of bothers me that I'm seeing online. Like people are trying to get clicks over it. Like, oh, look at my text with Charlie. Like that's to me a bit of an invasion of privacy. But the reason why I'm comfortable disclosing this is because he was a public figure, and that was part of his public life. And we were discussing this because I'm the Turning Point pollster, and we were talking about this. And he knew that the Senate was the swamp. The Senate is the swamp. And the biggest obstacle to any true MAGA or America First president sometimes isn't even administrative state. It's the swamp senators who protect the administrative state. You know, you have to get through that first. It's like their last line of defense. Of course, the administrative state is the problem, but it's like those senators are their bodyguards, Paul. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. No, I mean, Charlie was right on. I credit the guy, he actually got behind President Trump. Well, I was always a Trump guy, but like he was the guy with the platform. And in 2022 with these youth and everything, and he said, no, Trump's my guy. With all due respect to Governor DeSantis, who's a great guy and a great best governor in the country. Charlie stood up there unequivocally, said, no, I'm Trump or die. And, he died. But,
and then
we owe it to him to keep building these very things that Charlie was putting forward. And no one second only to Trump can command that kind of rally that he did. It's just the crowd sizes and bringing people in from all over the spectrum who are just engaged with your fellow man and woman. It was a really amazing thing to see.
And then Charlie, I'll say this last thing. And then Charlie, he did that in 22. And then proceeded to dump me into group chats with donors. And he would say, hey, guys, I know you don't like Trump, because they didn't. They don't. No Republican donor likes Trump. I don't give a damn who it is. It's like almost no Republican donor likes Trump. He would say, hey, guys, this is the best pollster in the country. He's going to give you he's going to explain two things to you. One, why the base and people like Donald Trump. And two, basic math, why Ron DeSantis cannot win this nomination. Like, he's like, can you share it with him, Rich? And it was always because we would talk about this. Like, what are we even doing here? Until you cut Trump's lead with non-college white Republicans, nobody can beat him in a primary. It's not mathematically possible. It doesn't matter, how close New Hampshire could get or whatever. It's like there aren't enough educated Republicans to defeat Donald Trump in a primary. And Charlie and I were just like going around making the rounds, trying to tell everyone, this is why I decided.
For doing that, but now the labor is still in front of us. The good news with the Trump endorsement, is like it can be taken back. Trump has been known to do that. I've been a Trump guy since the jump. We're dialing back to 2011. I'm curious about the birthplace of a former president. Let's put it that way. That's how I got on the Trump train originally. But look, I think that right now that Trump's endorsement, everyone sees as the future. And Lindsey Graham, this is going to hit not only our race, but this is going to extinguish the fire all over the country. You keep reading these newspaper articles, and they're like, he's knocking Tucker, he's knocking MTG, and he's extolling Lindsey Graham, and it's like,
Yeah.
this is wrong, and that's just gonna like, I said that people are just gonna go away. They're like,
They are, Paul.
they don't
They
understand
are.
that things can't get fixed overnight. They expect it to get fixed overnight, but when you're going out there saying all the prices are coming down, and they're seeing it with their own eyes, and it's sticky. Those prices are up there. Let alone the healthcare. What happens when your car breaks down? Someone breaks a leg. Someone gets cancer. I mean, this is just a massive impact. Let alone the whole oncoming AI thing, right?
Yeah.
The kids today are going to college, and they don't even know they're going to have jobs 2 years out.
That's a whole other conversation we should have one other day, because there's the AI thing, and then there's the H-1B visas, which I haven't gotten a chance to even tell my own personal story with that. This idea that, there's not enough talented people is a bit of a myth, in the sense that it's been a government policy to keep Americans from doing certain H-1B jobs for a long time. And I myself actually was impacted by that. And I've never told that story before, but until the president said what he said, I never felt the need to, I'm a pollster, not a policy, not a policy pusher. But since the president came out and said that, it's like, now nobody's advocating for the majority position in this country, because Democrats sure as hell aren't. Donald Trump used to, he's not doing it anymore, I guess. So that leaves who, right? But yeah, I mean, look, I kept you way over, brother. I'm going to let you get back to your family.
It's a pleasure to be with everyone today.
Yeah.
And, I feel very strongly. I'm very optimistic about where things can go, but we're in a spot right now where we dramatically have to course correct. You just can't let up after you score a goal. You have to get back out on the field and keep driving, and that's what's going. This game's not over. Winning with Trump was just the beginning, and the establishment wormed their way in, and they have basically taken over. But we can take it back. So I appreciate everyone's support. Go to pauldans.com. and check us out. You can, you can donate to us. Obviously, we appreciate it. $5, $10, $20, $100, but also just sign up to volunteer. We'll put you dialing voters here in South Carolina, and push out the message. But it's great. I want to again wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Paul, so much for coming on. Give my best to MH and the kids for me, and I'll talk to you soon. Happy Thanksgiving, brother.
Same to you. Take care.
All the best. Paul Dans, ladies and gentlemen. Look, this guy's got to be beaten. He's got to be beaten. I don't know what else to say. Lindsey Graham is the worst of the worst. I mean, I'm not being hyperbolic. And again, I decided to share that because, that element of Charlie's life is a public element, right? That's public space. And one of the first things he says, how do we get rid of Lindsey Graham? How do we get rid of Lindsey Graham? He's got to go. Well, the president's going to endorse him. I understand that. He's got to do what he's got to do. Whatever. We're going to do something else. How do we get rid of this guy? It was a big deal. And that's because he knew that some people are, and again, I'm going to use metaphors here, guys. I'm going to use symbolism, so nobody go clip it and put it on Mediaite. Some scalps are bigger than others. Some scalps send messages, not just to the administrative state, the blob, the deep state, or the establishment, but also to the voter. And that's the entire point of this episode. Republicans are out of time. They're out of time to convince the American public that they were going to really allow this rebrand. And I'm saying and using all these funny words, but what I really mean is they're out of time to convince the American voter that who they said they were was not a lie. And that was what was so damaging to among young voters specifically. That's what was so damaging about the Epstein situation. I mean, if I showed, and locals knows because we went over several comments, like some of them are really bad. Like, he's just a fraud, just like the rest of them. I mean, when you're at, 40+% strong disapproval with people like that, it's hard to get them back. And it will take bold changes and image makeovers in order to do that. All right, guys. I was going to read this article. I think maybe I will tell the story of the first Thanksgiving really quick. But I'm going to start it out because I'm going to basically read an article that I wrote. My God, I'm getting old. This one's The Spirit of Capitalism, and this one's Capitalism Vindicated. They're both good. And I had a little bit different of a spin on each of them. And then from this other one in 2015, about 2 years later on the dot, Donald Trump, as president, his first year, would put out one of the most eloquent defenses of Americanism and capitalism and our culture, our history, the things we love, our values, our traditions, in his Thanksgiving message. And if you haven't seen that, or maybe you don't remember it, I really would implore you to go back and watch that Donald Trump. Because without Robert Mueller, that Donald Trump would have became the Donald Trump that won that incredible coalition in 24. Without Zelensky, that Donald Trump would have put together that incredible coalition, and on and on and on. All right. I mean, Democrats had all these hoaxes they threw at him. They hurt him. He didn't really have control of the government. Again, thanks to Paul Dans, things changed. Even though I was talking to a reporter called me the other day from Bloomberg, and she asked me, she was like, why does Chris just refuse to acknowledge they took his plan? Like, it's ridiculous. Why do they do that? And a big part, we'll talk about it after the holiday, a big part of the Republican problem with get out the vote, I always tell you, you need signal, right? And then you need infrastructure. Because it doesn't matter how good your infrastructure is, if your signal is not there, your infrastructure is not going to be able to take advantage of any enthusiasm or motivation. Harris had the best ground game in 24. It didn't matter because their signal sucked. People really didn't even want to vote for her, so they refused to even comply with the door knockers or the phone callers or all of it. You really need both. Republicans have a massive signal issue right now. They had a 5-7 point gap from 24 that they needed to make up if they were going to have a hope or a prayer in the midterm. They didn't do that. They're not even in the right universe on making sure that changes by the time we get to the midterms next year. They could change it. They could come around. Right now, though, there's not only that it's not only the case that they're not, and they haven't, but it's the case that there's no sign they will even learn the lesson yet. And then the second issue is the infrastructure. And this goes to what I was talking about before. A lot of people, after Donald Trump won, took credit for things they did not deserve credit for. And one of the biggest and most impactful, I would say, consequential roles where this happened was in the get out the vote arena. And the truth is, Donald Trump had signal like crazy, where it was kind of easy to take advantage. And if you guys have been following me for a while, you remember during the primary, our study of the Trump or bust voter and the unlikely voter, the low prop voter. By the way, I literally coined that phrase, by the way. They only told us, all right, let me put it this way. We asked them who or what would motivate you to vote. And while about 60% would repeatedly say, I'm just not going to vote. I don't think any side is going to do a damn thing. The 40% who were persuadable to get out, nobody mentioned DeSantis. Nobody mentioned Nikki Haley. Nobody mentioned that. It was always, well, if I do vote, it's because I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. Him, I mean, he probably does deserve my support, or maybe they were even more enthusiastic about it. Oh, yeah, Trump and Trump only. Love the guy. That's it. I want him to go in there and smash shit to pieces. And he didn't do that. So here we are. But the point of the matter is, a lot of these people who said they built this ground operation, they did that, I can name 3 organizations, and 3 organizations only that had a measurable impact in the battleground states in 2024. Donald Trump does not give himself enough credit. And it's amazing because, of course, we know he loves to do that. He has not given himself enough credit for the amount of low propensity or Trump or bust voters that he created and turned into low propensity vote that did actually come out. And he's in many ways, in many respects, as far as I see, he thinks so-and-so did do a good job. So-and-so here did a great job. They didn't do shit. They didn't do shit. Third-party groups, despite how many times I say this and the RNC attacks me on X, they can kiss my rosy red ass. They're not even using your dumbass data center. They were using data that they got from us when they came to get it from us. Data center blows. Data center sucks. It's generations and generations and generations and generations and generations behind what Democrats have. And they're not, we'll see. One of the groups actually did call and say, you know what, we were going to sit it out. We're going to try to make it work because we're going to get killed. So if we don't do it and we leave it up to the RNC and the state parties and the county parties and this, we're going to get destroyed. I don't know what Turning Point's going to do. They had a huge impact in Arizona. Turning Point was definitely consequential in Arizona. 10X was Rust Belt operation. Elon Musk was a big deal. Musk's organization knocked on my door like 4 times or something, right? 3 or 4 times. Huge, huge. And they actually had decent data. So again, which they amended using his tool. You know, I'm not going to get into it. You can start with data center and then dedupe it or append it to more updated databases that Musk no doubt has access to, and it will fix a lot of data center if you understand certain flaws that data center has, which is, for instance, swing voter. I was laughing with a client about this the other day. Swing voter in data center, it doesn't mean they know that voter's a swing voter. It means they know absolutely nothing about that voter. And that's what their swing voter is. And there are loads of them. There's no discernible difference between I don't know anything about this voter and a truly persuadable voter. The GOP's data blows. And if they want to buck history, I'm not saying, because I think different parties have different solutions. But looking at how the Democrats did it, Republicans better get a move on real soon, because they did it with the 3 R's, right? Remember? Redistricting, which Republicans are currently losing, completing their realignment, and the relay race, the ballot relay race. Republicans are nowhere near doing either 3 of those. They're currently on track. Maybe they'll end up a tad ahead on the redistricting war. Wait. As I've been saying from the beginning, wait and do not count your chickens before they hatch, as my old pappy used to say. Richard, don't count your chickens before they hatch. And he was right. You could end up -3, frankly. And you may. But we'll see. And so redistricting is kind of out the window, a wash at best. The realignment they have not completed. We spent all show today talking, or most of the show today, talking about why. The rest of the show was just incredible stuff from Paul Dans. He was on fire. But he's also just so right. He's so right. So obviously right. And there's just a huge part of this, guys, is that we just don't have people with spines. They don't, even if they were smart enough, like Paul is, because Paul's a brilliant guy, in case you haven't caught on. He's a brilliant guy. But they don't have the balls. So even if they were smart, they don't have the balls to go along with it. And that town, the system of government, it takes a special kind of person to keep wailing away at it and wailing away at it. And frankly, it's almost unrealistic and unreasonable to expect that you're going to get 51 senators that are like that, or 30 for that matter. But you do need to start building them up because they're not there. Mike Rounds is like a traitor through and through. All right. I mean, we can go down the list. One day, maybe we'll do that. We'll go down the list of U.S. senators, and I will tell you everything I know about them. They're scumbags. Almost all of them. Right, left, doesn't matter. Again, Mike Howell from Oversight. in DC. He went on War Room earlier today. If you missed that interview, I think you need to watch it because he's right. So that's why it's like this, well, I'll vote for whoever Trump endorsed. It just can't continue because Trump is thinking about how to best deal with his situation now. He is not thinking about your situation later. He's just not. And I understand that. But which one is more important to you? At some point, and it's a growing number of voters who are doing that. Trust me, we're talking to more than anyone else has polled. We have not just polled, but we have spoken to more voters in the last couple of weeks than any other person in this country. And I'm telling you, there's a growing number of people who are already starting to look past this. Why? Because they have decided that the actual movement and the agenda, because of the outcomes, that what they believe the outcomes of those policies and this movement will be, which is what they want: national renewal, prosperity, a peace dividend, the preservation of our culture, of our ideas, our values, stronger families, which in turn leads to stronger communities, which in turn leads to stronger cities, which in turn leads to stronger states, which in turn leads to a stronger nation. They believe in that. They want that. So they're putting policy over a person. Like, I mean, honestly, if you just do whatever somebody says to do, you're not exactly, I don't know. I don't want to use the C word, but that's not, it ain't critical thinking. All right. All right. Let me read this before we go. I'm going to take a shot in the dark here and see whether or not this is actually the best one to read. I'm thinking the one from 2014 was the OG. But it does bring up, yeah, let's do that. I do. I think there's a quote from my old book in there. I'm the only person you'll ever talk to in this business who will say, don't buy the book. It's a wonky read. It's a thesis statement. It's a thesis statement once a thesis idea turned into a book. And it's not for everybody. You would have to be very interested in that topic. But bottom line is I'm trying to demonstrate the relationship in history between virtue's impact on liberty and tyranny. Okay. And in other words, the more virtuous in this country was built around this concept, the more virtuous you are, the less you need government. All right. And there's a reason for that. I'm just going to leave it at that. But let me read this because I think Paul came in here with a banger, and I think it's worth bringing it up. All right. So this is old school, guys. It's old school. Real Thanksgiving message: faith and capitalism vindicated. In 1863, President Abraham Lincoln proclaimed a national day of, quote, thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent Father who dwelleth in the heavens, unquote. And America became the first nation to establish a holiday based upon gratitude. Think about that. Americans were thankful for their faith, the good fortune, which in many different ways, and the political and economic systems that nurtured their way of life. Every year since that year of untold hardship during the Civil War, 1863 was bad. We Americans take the day to reflect on the things in each of our own lives we are thankful to have. However, rarely do we as a nation collectively reflect on things we have to be thankful for as a result of living in this great nation. Much to the chagrin of collectivists, the national character of America is still very much individualistic. Even those collectivists who want to be good collectivists, they're at their core individualistic. They are. And this Thanksgiving, I thank God for that. I thank God that it is. The first Thanksgiving nearly never happened because they had a chance to be thankful for anything because they didn't have a chance. The Pilgrims almost starved to death. Schools often teach our children that Squanto, Patuxet Native American, who resided with the Wampanoag tribe, taught the Pilgrims how to catch eel, fish, and grow corn. Unfortunately, they skipped over the rest of the story. Pilgrims operated under a communal system when they first settled Plymouth. The charter dictated that they would share in common property and farms, and as a result, each family was to receive an equal share of food despite how much work they put in. It was a colonial era wealth distribution scheme. By the way, later Samuel Adams would call it evil, and he would say all schemes of leveling are evil and, in this republic, unconstitutional. So if the Supreme Court could take our founders' personal writings and use them as justifications for their rulings, such as it was done with Jefferson's letter to the Bishop of Danbury, which was used to justify what people have now misconstrued as a separation of church and state, then why the hell not use Sam Adams saying, you know what, socialism actually is just flat out unconstitutional. Wouldn't have Obamacare or this subsidy fight, would we? The result of this wealth redistribution scheme was as expected: widespread starvation. Quote, much was stolen by night and day, Governor William Bradford wrote, but he quickly noticed the less agreeable aspects to human nature, notably the innate human desire to free ride if and when allowed, and he changed course. Adopting a free market capitalism mentality, which was strengthened by the Protestant ethic, such a big point, Governor Bradford noticed that the Pilgrims now, quote, went willingly into the field. They began now to gather in the small harvest they had and to fit up their houses and dwellings against winter, being all well recovered in health and strength, and had all things in good plenty, Bradford wrote. Due to property incentives, self-interest, and the tenets of their faith, including their unique work ethic, the soon-to-be founders of Plymouth Rock and Massachusetts Bay Colony, they prospered. But without capitalism, there would have been no true right to property, thus little to no incentive. Folks, we talked about this in book club actually last week. The real problem was never capitalism. The real problem was that we abandoned capitalism. And the rise of secularism and decline in virtue was the necessary, inevitable result. Sadly, there are those in American society that seek to distort and diminish the true spirit of capitalism. Those who seek to define the system in terms of greed and selfishness. Yet, just as today's Thanksgiving celebrations would likely be unrecognizable to attendees of the original 1621 harvest meal, the same is true with modern capitalism. Our Protestant-dominated founding fathers believed capitalism to be a means to a much different end than it is viewed to be now. Faith lies at the heart of this disparity in thought, and it is a certain faith. Despite what you read from the bots on X, it is not simply just all faiths. It is a specific one because it taught specific virtues. Quote. Oh, this is my quote, isn't it? Virtues and ethics are all that separate classical American capitalism from the simple pursuit of wealth that transpired in antiquity, European-style capitalism, and the modern American free market. The removal of one's virtuous obligation to worldly asceticism or frugality has made the pursuit of wealth an object of greed. The book was a defense of traditional American values, not the ones you think you know today. Political, economic, and cultural systems. Early Americans faithfully believed it was their duty to work, to harvest, and to provide, hence their unique work ethic. The goal was not to become a burden on civil society, and further, to achieve the social and economic status that enables you to serve and help others. Quote again. The secularization of American capitalism has made the pursuit of wealth an end, whereas with Protestantism, wealth historically was a means to achieve a strong civil society. Very different. And don't take my word for it. Max Weber, the German sociologist and the political economist, wrote of the origins, history, and the true spirit of capitalism long before I ever did. And he wrote this: the impulse to acquisition, pursuit of gain, of money, of the greatest possible amount of money, has in itself nothing to do with capitalism. And he, of course, wrote this in The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. It is a seminal book, and if you have not read it, you must. Forget about mine. You must read this book. It should be taught in the kindergarten of cultural history that this naive idea of capitalism must be given up once and for all. Unlimited greed for gain is not in the least identical with capitalism, and it is still less its spirit. Unquote. A free market where people are free to make choices and ultimately to live as they wish is the true cradle of liberty. Our founding fathers established a political and economic system in a new nation, one they thought was the new Israel, by the way, that would nurture the more agreeable characteristics of human nature, though it has unquestionably been distorted and diminished. I am thankful that it still survives in some way today. And that's what we're doing, whether we even know it or not, tomorrow. And maybe it's time for us to become a little bit more conscious about that. All right. All right. We have hologram liberty and hologram capitalism in this country. It is, in truth, and has been for a while, much closer to some ugly form of fascism. It's true. Fascism gives you the veneer of a private sector, the veneer of private sector leaders making decisions about productivity, labor, CapEx, when in truth, that's bullshit. The government plays winners and losers. They pick winners and losers. They choose favorites and the disdained. And that is why, Peter Thiel, you're wrong. You're right about your prescription, but you're actually wrong when you say that capitalism has not worked for young people. And this is why they are angry. My answer to that would be, how about you try actual capitalism for once? You box them out of the system. You gave their wealth away. You gave it to other people who aren't even American citizens. You gave it to other countries, governments, crooks, oligarchs, cartels. And you made it, let's just say, increasingly difficult for them to take advantage of their birthright, which is to be an inheritor of U.S. citizenship that provides you with an opportunity to live the American dream. It entitles you to it. And we robbed that from them. And we did so by pretending it was capitalism. It wasn't. All right, guys. It's 3:49. I have to go and review a summary findings of one of these polls and make sure I agree with everything in it so I can sign it off. And then I want to be done and enjoy my own Thanksgiving, as I'm sure you do. Locals, I'll see you. You know I'm going to go out there and mess with my lights outside, and I'll probably run a video of it a little bit. I almost went live in this Tavern and Grill, which is a historic landmark in New Bern last night, because the Christmas decorations were just beautiful. And Ro was running around everywhere like, Daddy, look at this Santa. Daddy, look at this. And then he runs up to the dessert thing, which is always on this like silver platter. And he's like, they're fake. Sticks his finger right in it. I'm like, no, my God. No, they're not, son. Those are not fake desserts. but they're old. You know, you're not going to eat one of those. They use them to put them on display, but it was hilarious. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. If I can get done in time today, I'll probably take them back downtown and we'll go to this place, which is famous for its Christmas fudge, which I'll probably get a little bit of, but I got to watch but what I would like is some of their hot cider until mine is done being made, or even their hot chocolate is amazing. Amazing. One of the best Santas ever, by the way. Santa is there. Shit. Laura, clip that. Damn. All right. Should have quit while I was ahead, huh? All right. So I hope you guys all have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them. All right. And share them far and wide. Go check out Paul. Go follow him on X. He's always putting up some great videos, you'll learn a lot about him. You go get an inside peek in his life as well. He's always with his girls, and what a beautiful family he has, But all these videos are certainly illuminating because they show you that he's focused like a laser on the things that actually matter to the American voter, which is, every video is about cost of living. Every video is about these issues that people care about because they have a right to care about them, because they are right. And check them out. As always, he gave you the link, and I'm sure if it's not there, it'll be in the description. But it's his Twitter handle and his X handle, all that. That's in the stuff that we did share, and it's in, I believe, the Getter thing as well. But if not, we'll add it. All right. And go enjoy your families. Go enjoy your friends. Go enjoy your loved ones. Go enjoy your kids. Go enjoy your grandkids. Whatever it may be. Maybe you're going to go enjoy your grandparents or your parents. Enjoy it. Have fun. Take a load off. Trust me, the world's not going anywhere. It'll be there when we get back. So thanks for joining, as always, folks. Nothing but love for you. Happy Thanksgiving from Laura and I, our family to yours. And we'll see you again on Friday. And a special thanks to Paul Dans, who came the day before Thanksgiving. Later, guys.